Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to our next installment of Training as a Business Driver, where we spend time connecting with the most interesting people in the industry that are using training as a way to actually drive business results. And I'm beyond excited to have who I would call a friend. I am a former client, and somebody they often say changed my life is the one and only Kelly Ruta of Kelly Ruta International. Welcome on the
Hello,
show
hello,
today,
Steve.
Kelly.
Hello to everybody. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really, really honored and I'm very excited to have this conversation.
Awesome. So I invited Kelly today because she has this really unique perspective of being a 20-year psychotherapist who has, for the past 10 years, built an amazing business coaching high level CEOs, business owners, people like me to actually break through and achieve goals that we never dreamed possible. And coming from the world of learning and development, where I spent all of my time, I focus mostly on skill development, strategy, all the things that we're taught. But the truth is, the single biggest barrier to the success that you desire, that your people desire, that your company desires, is always starts internally and then can escape externally. So I came across a conversation in a really interesting Facebook group called the Evil HR Lady. If you're an HR person, I highly recommend you spend time in there. It's probably one of the best communities that I've seen for guidance and support. But there was a conversation about, does it feel kind of sometimes like maybe the managers, the people in my company are acting a little bit like 5-year-olds? And Kelly, I know you're laughing with me because it does feel that way, but
Mhm.
it's almost like saying, I have cancer, right? You can't even literally say it out loud because there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of guilt.
Mhm.
And for most people, we don't want to embarrass anyone else. So I immediately thought of my good friend Kelly and a conversation that she had with me about, is a 6-year-old running your business? That was so powerful that I reached out to her and asked her if she would spend a couple of minutes with me and my community talking about why, if you feel like sometimes you are managing managers who are acting somewhat like younger children might, I want you to know, first of all, you're not crazy. Right? Not crazy.
Not at all. Not at all.
Not crazy, right? That it's actually predictable,
Mhm.
right? It's predictable. And I've even gotten to the place where when my inner 5-year-old comes out, I'm so grateful. And Kelly's going to explain why that is,
Yeah.
because it's actually a signal that you're ready for the next element of growth.
Yes.
And so I'm going to turn this over to Kelly and I'm going to ask her to just simply start off by, why would someone like me be so happy to realize that I'm acting like a 5-year-old today, right? And not ashamed by that, but fueled by that, because I know it actually means that I'm ready to expand beyond what I know to be true today. I'm going to
Yeah.
turn it over to you, Kelly. Hit us
Yeah.
with why that's true.
So there's a lot of reasons. I'm going to get to that in just a second. But what I want to start off by saying is, if you're somebody listening to this and you feel like, oh, maybe it's me, or maybe and especially if you're a woman and you've been told, oh, you're sensitive, too sensitive, or you feel like this is crazy, I'm crazy, they're crazy. Let's put this to bed for once and for all. You're not crazy. They're not crazy. This is completely explainable. I will explain it to you in a second. And it's very valid. The problem is, up until recently, I don't think that companies have known what to do about it. So individuals have been left trying to analyze it, figure it out, come up with solutions, deal with their frustration, their confusion, their shame, their anger, all the feelings about it. And when you're left feeling that way and trying to figure that out on top of the 7,000 other things you do a day, it's exhausting and you're probably not going to get very far, but that is not your fault. So that's the thing. Gosh, if you take anything away from what I say to you today, let it be that there is no shame in this. You're not crazy and it's not your fault. So you can exhale and you can learn something new today that
Yeah.
allows you to understand it better. Because once we understand what's going on better, it opens the door to doing things differently, much like Sue was just talking about. You
Yeah.
can shift your perspective about what's going on. You can also shift the way you respond to what's going on instead of reacting to what's going on either inside you or with the people that you are working with. So just to back up a little bit, the video I did and the conversation that we had was, is a 6-year-old running your business? And for some of you, that might be as a 6-year-old or a bunch of 6-year-olds running your department or a bunch of 6-year-olds, in your company and contributing to what is happening or not happening in your company. And really the point of this is, we've all been exposed to little kids. We know how they act. But when adults behave like little kids, it's often for very, very good reason, especially in the workplace. So the last couple of years have been very challenging, regardless of what kind of business you're in, the size or the industry or the field. It's been challenging for all of us on a lot of levels. And the way I have looked at this is that it's an invitation for us as business owners, as company owners, for CEOs, for leaders within companies. It's an opportunity for us to take a really good hard look at ourselves and growth opportunities. And I don't just mean the bottom line, the revenue and profit margins. I
Yeah.
mean growth in all ways: innovation, creativity, service, products, all of the things. But
Kelly, if
what you
I
have,
could just add one on to that,
please.
like the biggest thing when I started to uncover what was going on, like why was this happening for me? I, one of the biggest issues was I couldn't sleep at night.
Mm,
The stress I was under, because there were just these things happening and they weren't making sense and I didn't know what I was doing. And the stress I was under, one of the biggest relief pieces I got by broadening my horizons here was I actually sleep really well at night.
mm,
I have far less stress
mhm.
that actually enables me to actually show up very differently
Yes.
just because of that.
Yes. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because everybody understands the word stress, but it manifests differently for different people.
Mhm.
For some people, you may see them behaving in an avoidant way. They're not meeting deadlines. They're not showing up the way that they really need to show up. For other people, maybe they're becoming confrontational, irritable. They're, difficult to work with. And for other people, you might not notice anything at work, but at home, there is a lot of suffering and struggling going on with, sleep, with not feeling well, with your nutrition, exercise, your interpersonal relationships, whatever. So you make a very, very good point. And this stress is coming from being triggered. There's a lot of triggered people walking around in offices or even working from home right now.
Yeah.
But the thing I want you to understand in reference to a 6-year-old running your business has to do with the intersection of our psychological development and our biological development. And this is not something that people are used to learning about or hearing about in the workplace, really,
Mhm.
which is why I love what I do so much, because
Right.
it's new for people and they begin to understand on a humanistic level
Yeah.
what is going on. This is not just about productivity or time management or, any of these things that we're so used to hearing. This is understanding human behavior and how we get the best out of ourselves and out of other people.
Yeah.
So that brings me to the 6-year-old reference. So really the big point to understand is that between birth and somewhere around 6-ish, we are kind of offline, so to speak. And what I mean by that is, psychologically speaking, our subconscious minds are taking in anything that we are receiving on repeat. So if you happen to grow up in a family, for example, this is a really common example a lot of people can relate to, where you've heard a message around like money doesn't grow on trees. Money doesn't grow on trees. What, and there's this scarcity message all the time around money because we are not consciously online yet, meaning our psychology has not developed to the point where we are super aware of ourselves. We are super conscious. Everything just kind of goes into the subconscious mind and becomes part of your belief system. We are made on purpose this way. Why? Because between 0 and 6, we're learning how to survive in a family, survive in a community, survive in a classroom, survive, on a farm, survive. Over the years, it's evolved, but between 0 and 6, it's about survival. It's about learning the basic skills to be attached to the people who will ensure our survival. So family, community, those sorts of things. So you want lots of messages to get in quickly. I think of, and this is another one that people go, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. If you've ever been around a kid, kids reach for things they're not supposed to reach for. And, they're impulsive. So either you or a kid, has tried to dart out after a ball, a skateboard, or something into the street and did not look for traffic. And if there was an adult around, what happened? You got screamed at. You likely got yelled at, threatened, the whole thing. Like, you've got to look both ways. The point being, it was a very emotional experience. And it just landed in I like to say, the back of your mind, your subconscious mind. I'm almost 51 years old. I remember that like it was yesterday. Same thing with reaching for the pot on the stove with the boiling water. You probably got the same reaction, or sticking your finger in the, outlet, that kind of stuff. Those things go directly into your subconscious mind because it improves the likelihood of your survival. But we get a lot of other messages between 0 and 6 that go in that create what I refer to, and a lot of people in my field refer to, as limiting beliefs. In other words, they don't really help you. They limit your growth. They limit your success. They limit your ability to express your individual potential. So they're messages around money, around gender, around power, time, visibility, all sorts of things. So you grow past 6, you become a conscious individual. You're still exposed to lots of messages. The difference is after 6, you can say, that does not resonate with me. I'm not taking that one in. I'm not internalizing that. But you still have with you all of the things that you receive between 0 and 6. And if you hear another message on repeat over and over and over after 6, and it triggers a strong emotional response in you, it's probably going in. So while intellectually, there are lots of things, for example, about being a woman that I've been told in terms of, act like a lady, or, women.
Be nice.
Yes.
Be nice.
Nice. Holy cow. Nice. All of those things. Intellectually, I have said no since I was a kid. I mean, I can remember choosing to be Susan B. Anthony in like 4th grade as when we dressed up as a historical figure in school. That's who I chose. So from an early age, intellectually, I was very aware that those messages didn't resonate with me, but they still went in. And this creates a lot of friction for people. And by the way, this is universal. This is not male, female. This is not based on race, culture, religion. It's not based on any of those things. This is the way the human mind and the human brain work.
All right, let me just do a quick recap on this because there were so many golden nuggets in there. I almost don't even know where to begin. So let me just make sure I have this right. Okay. So really, the way we're operating today was truly formed from that age of 0 to 6.
Yes.
And quite frankly, for most of us, if you've never explored any of those messages or any of those systems, we're simply operating as programmed.
Yes.
I think I've heard you talk about this in the past too. It's a computer program. If you
Yes.
have the Windows 95 operating system, you can get a brand new keyboard, you can get a beautiful new monitor, right? You can get all the things. It's still going to operate as a Windows 95 system, right?
Absolutely.
So you
Absolutely.
have to change the system. The
Yeah.
other thing that I feel like I really take away from that, and I know that I took away from you, is that we only revert back to some of those behaviors in a little bit more of those times of stress
Yes.
or times when this world we've built around ourselves is, either threatened in some way by someone else. But even just in our everyday life as adults and in the workspace, anytime you're asked to rise up to a challenge that's without this comfort zone, we
Mhm.
are bumping up against what you refer to as the upper limit.
Yes.
Did I capture that in a
You
layman's terms?
absolutely captured that, and I think, so just a couple of points of nuance. An upper
Mhm.
limit is a term that came from Gay Hendricks. If you've not read The Big Leap, I highly
Oh
recommend
my
the work.
gosh. The number one book everyone should be reading.
It's outstanding.
Mhm.
Everyone has them. We often have similar ones, but everyone has them, and they become most obvious, whether it's in the workplace or in your personal life, during times of stretch.
Stretch.
So we might
Mhm.
say these are stressful times, but really what they are is they're times of stretch. And sometimes they're times of stretch that we're intentionally reaching for. Say we're setting new goals and we're striving for them. Other times in life and in business, they're kind of thrust upon us.
Like the
Whether it's
pandemic.
yeah,
Like the
exactly,
pandemic.
like
Yes.
a pandemic, like geopolitical things going on, like
Mhm.
even things inside of companies where someone above you is saying to you, from now on, we're doing it this way, or we're headed in this direction, and you need to adapt. That's a time when you are being told to stretch rather than initiating the stretch. Regardless, you're going to bump up against your default mode. And we all have them.
Yeah.
And again, oftentimes around money. So you'll hear messages in your own head, which is what makes it feel like you're crazy, but you're not crazy. Around, who am I to do this? This is crazy. I can't. I shouldn't. It's not possible. It's not safe. It's not okay. All of these things, those are upper limit problems. And
Mhm.
we learned them very early on. And I think the reason so many of us, before we understand this, feel like we're a little crazy is because this is not an intellect problem. And all of us have been sold such a bag of goods about intellect. Let me tell you, intellect's fabulous. Thank goodness for incredibly intelligent people. But if all it took was intelligence to solve business problems, we wouldn't have business problems. Like that does not solve everything. So the
Yeah.
reason you feel crazy is because your intellect is telling you one thing, but your subconscious mind has programs that bump right up against that and are
Mhm.
often in direct opposition to what your rational mind is thinking.
Yeah. And to reiterate how that shows up in business all the time, it's one of the biggest reasons most training programs really aren't that successful is because we're teaching skill,
Yes.
knowledge, right? We're teaching all the intellectual things, but the reason we're not taking that action on that new skill is because we're afraid, because we don't think it's for us, because we believe it's not possible. There's all kinds of things that we bump up against internally, and it's really, I think, contributed to this. I must be crazy, because what I hear managers say all the time, but I sent them to training. Why
Right.
isn't it any different? I sent them to training. I told them what to do, right? I laid out every step. Like,
Right.
I work with managers, I know you do, CEOs, in training, and they're like screaming at me. They're like, why won't they just do what I tell them? This is the path. And
Mm.
whenever you hear yourself saying something like that, you now know it's not because they don't know what to do.
Mhm.
There are just things in their way that
Yes.
they probably can't even verbalize.
Yes, yes, and that's such a good point,
Yep.
and up until recently, this wasn't even discussed in the workplace. So again, I
We
use the
barely
word,
discuss now.
yeah, and I use the word humanistic because I know the way that the business world is going to improve, innovate, and expand is going to be based on their willingness, companies' willingness to
Willingness.
invest not just in skill acquisition and talent acquisition and knowledge acquisition, but it's going to be investing in things like people understanding that EQ is as important, if not more important, than IQ. So yeah, that means learning to have command over the F word, feelings, that everybody goes, oh, feelings in the workplace. Oh my gosh.
But see, the problem, I'm totally done with you. The willingness thing jumps right out at me because I actually created what I call the participant willingness cycle. It's literally a defined process of the steps somebody needs to go pass through in order to, what I say, get in the pool, right? So as a facilitator, my job is to get people into the pool, which means get them into a place where they're taking action
Mhm,
that will actually change and achieve whatever result your organization wants to
mhm,
achieve. The problem is, on the left side, right, is skill. So
mhm.
if all somebody needs is a piece of information, right, they will jump right in the pool, they will get started, and they will achieve success. So
Right.
people will say to me all the time, but my program worked. I got this person to do it. The problem is a good 85% of your audience is sitting in one of two buckets. Yes, but, and I can't do that.
Yes. And some of them
Yes, but,
vacillate
and I
between both
can't do
buckets.
that.
Some of them are on Monday are in one bucket, and on Thursday they're in another bucket. This
Yes,
happens all the time.
yes.
Yeah. And
Yep,
so you make such an outstanding
yep.
and I think nuanced point because again, so many of the old sort of stale business discussions they're outdated because they're talking about people like we're widgets. People are very dynamic,
Mhm.
understanding the interface of the human brain, the human mind, and then human output, our behavior, is what's going to help companies advance.
Mhm.
Because again, if it was just skill and knowledge acquisition, people would either do it or not do it. And it would just be very, very clear cut. There would be no other, well, they learned it, but they didn't do it. Why? And this person's doing it, but that person's not doing it. I think people have to begin to understand that compartmentalizing personal growth and business growth no longer works. I'm not
Mhm.
saying you show up at the office and you share your deepest, darkest secrets and your traumas and you're crying at meetings and all that. I'm not saying that.
Mm-mm.
I'm saying in a very organized, professional way, we need to start including the development of your people on your team, your leadership team, include from the CEO down to anybody, a brand new person that,
Mhm.
it's their first week in the company. We all need to be investing in the growth of our people if we want to really invest in the growth of our companies.
Yeah,
That's
I love it.
just the bottom line. It's the bottom line.
And there needs to be, and I don't think it really exists, right? I think, Kelly, you're one of the people working on this solution in my
Mhm.
company. We're working on this solution from a training perspective, because the question becomes, so in order to create successful training, in order to become a successful manager, you have to understand, you have to be able to identify. First of all, you have to have some compassion for people when they're bumping up against an upper limit, because that is an awful place to be.
It is.
That is a very humbling place to be. And the people that truly desire to be successful and are willing to go through that should be applauded
I
and
agree.
celebrated,
I
right?
agree.
And I feel like, that's not happening. So, first of all, even just developing compassion. I had a situation this morning. Somebody sent something to me that I know is coming from a wound and not from the healed space.
Mhm,
But because I understood that, I didn't fire back with both
mhm,
barrels. I
mhm,
didn't. And quite frankly, I don't ever have to do that again.
mhm.
because I know what's happening,
Mhm.
right? So that, like, you might not know the solution, but you don't have to continue to be part of the problem.
Correct.
You can break the cycles. And when you're learning things that Kelly knows and that she teaches, you are automatically shifting the entire dynamic because you are no longer showing up as part of the problem.
Agreed. And
And
it
you might not know
completely
the solution.
Yeah, well, and it completely
But
changes company culture, and that's a
yeah,
lot of what we're talking about here. Company culture, it's a buzz term. Really, it just means how do people feel working in your environment? It's what is the culture of your environment? And if you are not embracing, encouraging, and rewarding things like vulnerability with boundaries, compassion, patience, empathy, things like that in the workplace, your your company is not going to grow either as quickly or as in as an impactful way as it can. And again, we're not just talking about bottom line. Yeah, I want you to make tons of money. Like, to be very, very clear. But I want you to make tons of money making a difference in whatever industry you're in. That's how we do it. And that's
yeah,
what consumers want at this point. Nobody likes feeling like, cattle. That's not how they want to feel in their experience with your company. And so this is an inside out job,
yeah,
both with individuals, but within the corporate and company culture as well. And that's exactly what you're talking about. When you yourself shift from a person who feels like they have to be in control, which likely leads to you being reactive, to a person who's in command and leads to you being responsive, the ripple effect is
massive.
huge. And
Massive.
then you're modeling it for other people in the company,
Mhm.
and they will see the really positive outcomes, and they're going to want to emulate that. They're going to want to be part of that. That's what we want.
I love it. Well, listen, Kelly, I really can't thank you enough for jumping in and having this really necessary and important conversation because, I want to applaud everyone out there that is feeling these things, right? Recognizing that something's not quite right and being vulnerable and brave enough to raise your hand and speak in public forums and say, "I I don't know what's happening here, but it doesn't feel right to me." I
Yes.
want even more people trusting that intuition, that gut.
Yes.
I feel, we're often very disconnected from that. We often don't, believe, like we think we're crazy is the best word. I would have told you over and over and over again, I was the most awkward person in the room. But the truth was, I was just attuned to things that I didn't yet have words for,
Mhm.
that didn't yet make sense to me. And, the first phase of any journey is just expansion. Like
Mhm.
from a training perspective, it's three things. How do you disrupt current thought patterns and expand someone's awareness, which is the pure intention of today? If we got you leaned in and saying, I'm not even sure I know what these ladies are talking about, but it's something I want to know more of.
Curiosity. Yes.
Yes, then we have wholeheartedly achieved the mission that something like this can achieve, right? It's that expansion. You have to first disrupt what you know to be true and be exposed to things that change how you think, how you feel, how you act, how you
Mhm.
perceive. Once that happens, then you can open yourself up to more formalized experiences, trainings, workshops,
Mhm.
meetings, right? So that you can continue really building that knowledge base. And then it's really about how do we get you into action and stay connected to you
Yes.
while you are achieving that goal. Those are really the three things. So, Kelly, I want you to just wrap up for us today because my job is to really create the awareness.
Yeah.
I just want more people realizing that when a manager can't delegate, right? When they're gossiping like a mean girl, right? when when they're not meeting their deadlines and looking at you with a blank face,
Mhm.
it's not because they're stupid,
No.
not because they don't know better, right? It's not
And
even
it's not because they don't wanna do better most times
that's what I was gonna say. It's
either.
not even because they don't want to do better. They're just operating as programmed.
Yes. That's
right?
that's
Period.
that is exactly what it is. If one shift you can begin to turn into an actual change in your perception, meaning like every day you're stopping and pausing with curiosity instead of judgment. That's the big thing.
That's a
When
great
you look
takeaway.
at your people with curiosity, I wonder what's really going on here instead of what is your problem? What is the problem?
What's
That's the
wrong with
difference,
you?
right? That's the difference. If you can begin to do that, what it does is it opens up the door, not just for creative solution, but for the thing that every human being yearns for, being seen and being connected with. That's what we all want as human beings. We don't all need to be best friends at work, but
Right.
we need to be, as humans, we have a deep psychological need to be seen, to know that we matter, and to connect to other human beings. And you cannot connect with the people you manage through judgment. You will repel people, you will shut them down, you will not invite them. Like if you raise the bar, but then you judge them, they're not going to rise to the occasion. They're going to fight with you to lower the bar. If you approach them with curiosity and compassion, they will be much more likely to open up about what's really going on, to troubleshoot solutions for what's going on. And the other thing is, and I will be totally honest with you about this one. This is not my number one strength. Look, I'm straight up about this. Patience is not my number one strength. Ask my kids, they'll tell you. I have patience with my clients, but not my kids. But so I get it if you're one of those people that's like, oh, that's a little difficult for me. But the truth is, I have difficulty extending it to my children because my parents didn't extend it to me. So the thing I want to leave you with is this: the way people are behaving is more about what's going on with them than it is about what's going on with you. Yes, there might be some friction between you. There are other factors, but understand most of what you see people putting out into the world and how they're putting it out, especially if it's reactive and triggered and all of that, is about what's going on with them.
With
And
them.
that's what we have to get to and find some common ground on. When you can do that, just about everything is solvable.
Love it. Love it. So I'm taking away that if you're noticing people acting in a certain way, first of all, grace and compassion is always the way to go. It'll change your feeling, it'll change how you respond. And sometimes that's all we have control of. So if you want to make
Absolutely.
your life easier, lead with compassion. I
Mhm.
truly believe that. That just makes your life easier. It really
Yes.
does. Secondly, it's solvable and fixable.
Yeah.
It is. It's solvable and fixable. And
Yeah.
I'm actually proof. I'm proof because I, originally, came to Kelly with every single problem we were just talking about, every single problem that we've just been talking about. And it's not like I'm cured, but like I function completely differently. So
Well,
Kelly,
keep in mind, if I can just interject one quick
yeah,
thing, and this is for you and everybody else, none of you are broken.
yes, yes,
You're
yes,
not broken. So we get disconnected internally from things and externally from each other, but you're not broken. And
actually,
so if we can just put that to rest as
yes,
well, like, oh, I'm
yes.
not
Let's
broken,
let's get rid
I
of
just
that
got
too.
unplugged somewhere and I got to figure out how to plug it back in.
I'm actually so happy that you brought that up because when in the beginning they were like, "Well, you're disconnected." I'm like, "I don't even know what that
Yep.
means."
Yep.
I don't even know what it means.
I
I
know.
would have just told you I was broken
Yep.
and that I needed to be
Yep.
pieced back together. And you're right. That wasn't true at all. I just needed to get aligned with what, the programming, with what I wanted and what I was able to do at that point in time. So
Mhm.
I'm actually really happy that you brought that up. I think that's really, really solid. So let me just wrap up today because
Mhm.
Kelly is definitely somebody worthy of knowing. You can follow her. What's the best place to follow you these days on social media? That's always a good
You
place to get
you can
connected.
find me on Facebook, you can find me on Instagram, and I will be reconnecting with LinkedIn after I get back from some much needed vacation time. I'll be
Awesome.
revamping my LinkedIn account. So you can
Awesome.
find me in any of those places, or you can shoot me an email at info@kellyruta.com at any time.
That sounds so good. And if this is really an interesting conversation that you'd love to bring into your organization, I want you to know that Kelly is available for those opportunities as well. She's an amazing keynote speaker. She does a great fireside chat. And if you just want to start exploding minds and opening up and laying the foundation for future conversations, it would be an amazing thing for you to have her come to a retreat, to a leadership team
Love
meeting,
them. Yes.
right? Like those are exceptionally good ways for, people in the organization to start hearing this message and making really good informed decisions about whether it's right to bring into their company. So
Absolutely.
definitely connect with her on those things as well. Kelly, so much gratitude. Thank you so
Great.
much for sharing your time with me today. This was really powerful, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.